Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, where we respond to your questions on matters of culture, political philosophy, history, economics, all those things that are important to us in trying to live well together in a good society.
You're going to like that one from Jeff. He talks about the recent U.S. election, a lot of discussion about the white working class Americans. A lot of them, especially in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, are of Germanic and or Scandinavian heritage. But he's also interested in the Scot-Irish guys, the borderers and the hillbillies. Aha, I told you you'd like that one.
Right.
And he's asking you to comment on the ancestral history of mix of border people and their immigration to North America, very often at the point of an English sword. And he's asking if you agree, as some believe, that the culture that developed by being the often abused buffer between Scotland and England is the source of the visceral distrust of big government and high taxation.
That is a wonderful question to which the
I knew
short
you'd like
answer
it.
is yes, absolutely. And the long answer, well, the really long answer is David Hackett Fisher's book, Albion's Seed. And it was highly recommended to me by somebody who warned me that it was 10,000 pages long, which is only a slight exaggeration. But Fisher, in that book, takes a detailed look at the way in which the British colonies that later became the United States were settled not just from Britain, though they overwhelmingly were up until the Revolution, but from particular parts of Britain going to particular parts of the New World. Thus, from the south and southeast, Pilgrims and Puritans went to New England. And to this day, New England bears a strong stamp of its cultural origins, not just in overtly ideological matters, though I would suggest that political correctness is a very Puritan thing, but right down to the kind of colors in their clothing, the style of their cooking. It's astonishing how prevalent cultural patterns are. Things like how you raise your children and what you think about divorce. Because curious enough, to the Puritans, divorce was not a sin. Marriage, like so many other things, was just a contract to them, and if the contract ceased to benefit the parties, they could dissolve it. Then you get the settlement of the Tidewater South from southwestern England, Old Wessex, the heart of royalist England, strong for King Charles in this English Civil War, strong for John at the time of Magna Carta. And a lot of people think of that as the South, but there's a great deal more to it. Before we get to that, we have to get to the Quakers, who come from the Midland hill country of England, and they seem to be kind of de-alcoholized Vikings. And they're very alienated from the institutions of society. They don't go to university. They are extremely egalitarian. This is where this thee and thou business comes from. If they have servants on their farm, most of them were not very wealthy, but if they did have servants, they would eat with the family, and they go and settle Pennsylvania. And they inject into America this genius for voluntary cooperation without waiting for George or King George to do it. And then you get the hillbillies. Yeehaw! And these people, I should explain, by the way, the term Scotch-Irish is a bit of a misnomer. It refers to people who are sent from the border regions of England and Scotland to Northern Ireland because they were so unruly the English couldn't cope with them, and they said, we hate you, you hate us, why don't you go beat up the Irish Catholics? And off they went and beat up the Irish Catholics before moving to the New World. But a great many of these people do not go via Ulster. They come straight from Yorkshire and Tynedale, where my ancestors are from, so North England, South Scotland. And these people are the libertarian strand in American politics. They're also, again, very egalitarian. It's why American politicians have names like Jimmy, because the borderers thought they were as good as anybody else, even if their arse was out of their pants. And this greatly offended the Puritans. Albion seeds often didn't get along very well with one another. But where the people in the Tidewater South are, in fact, very concerned with social hierarchy and order and tend to belong to the established church, the hillbillies, it's just a free-for-all. And they're the ones who bring free will Protestantism to the United States, as well as terrible cooking. The worst cooking in the British Isles. Bonnie Clabber, washing your feet in the cooking pot, using the tablecloth as a bedsheet. These are all stories that Fisher tells. It's a very funny book. But these are people who do have a great suspicion of all authority and who really dislike anyone who doesn't have the common touch. And as a matter of fact, according to Fisher, and the book's a few years old now, and the demographics are changing in America, but perhaps not as much as we thought, it is these people who are most likely to switch camps in presidential elections. And because they felt that the system was not giving them a fair shake under the Republicans, they went for Barack Obama. And people sometimes think hillbillies are bigoted, but that is untrue. Hillbillies hate everybody. Really, they hate outsiders. They fought against both sides in the American Civil War. And so these people give American culture its vulgarity. You know, the duct tape queen has got to come from Appalachia. Sarah Palin is a classic example. Some people would say, what's wrong with this stuff? But their rowdiness also is very patriotic. They have been the backbone of the American military over a great many decades. And they create a kind of wild, sometimes garish, but enormously fertile creativity in the United States, and they are less entrenched in their political preferences than a bunch of the other groups, which, if you don't like to see everybody just voting on bloc the way they've always voted, that too is a good thing. And Canada, curiously enough, though we got a lot of Scots, we got far fewer of the border type and more Highlanders, and that is partly why we've been called the quiet attic to America's rowdy house party. But Puritans don't like a whole lot of noise and commotion either. So this strand in American politics is really important, and Fisher has some anecdotes. I'll just have to tell a couple of them. One about this preacher who's going around the back country with his own personal kind of private church, saying anybody who didn't believe, even his own mother, would go to hell. And as he's delivering the speech, some old granny in the audience looks at him and says, "Why, Elisha Robbins, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I held you in my arms when you wasn't 2 days old, and you talking about your mama like that? Somebody ought to knock you down. And I'm going to do it." Pow! And Granny's right cross fells the guy, and off he slinks. Some people would find that appealing. Others would find it horrifying. But it is very much part of the United States. And again, part of what makes the United States such a dynamic country. Sometimes, again, that joke, why do Americans talk so loud so you can hear them over their clothes? That's an anti-hillbilly joke. But because, again, that is characteristic of that culture. But there is also a resilience, a willingness to improvise, rough and ready practicality. Yankee ingenuity didn't really come from New England as much as it did from the backcountry. So if you don't understand the borderers' influence, and they were borderers in the Old World and borderers in the New World, but they spread out to the backcountry, down in the South and up in the North. They end up in Indiana and all kinds of places like that. If you don't understand that strand, you won't understand the United States. Whether or not you think it's good to have live bait vending machines, you got to understand the borderers.
The ones right next to the guns and ammo? No,
yeah, the guns, liquor, and ammo. That was a store I saw in Austin, Texas. And I thought, that's convenient, machines. All in one place. But again, you can imagine people whose reaction would be less favorable.
Live bait in a shiny vending machine. I've seen that.
Gotta love America.
Didn't quite, anyway, that didn't do the job for me. But what do I know? I'm a Starbucks sipping kind of
And now you've reminded me of something else that is a mark of the United States, that both the Quakers and the Hillbillies show how an oppressed people in their homeland, when given room to stand up straight, can suddenly become a great source of strength in your society. And this is where America's openness has paid off for the United States and the world, as well as for its immigrants.
And all the jokes.
Yes. Including trailer parks, because trailer parks are they had disposable housing back home. They have disposable housing in America.
There you go. All right. I knew you'd like that question.
Yeah,
all right. Thanks for enough. Thanks for that, folks. If you would like to play along and ask your question of the professor, the URL on your screen will take you to a page where everything is explained. Thanks, and see you next time.